Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS. I am Pratik, your faculty for current affairs. Students, in today's session, we are going to focus on 5 important topics from polity. And these topics, once you go through these topics, trust me students, you will fetch good marks in the grand test to be held on 5th October. Right? So, if you are thorough with these topics, the questions will be asked from these topics, right? And if you're thorough with these topics, trust me, I don't think so you'd lose even a single mark if you're thorough with these topics. So make sure that you listen to these videos carefully. If you have listened to these videos before, then you can fast forward the videos and try to complete the videos. So in brief, you'll understand all these 5 topics. Listening to these topics will help you, trust me, get good marks, or I feel that if you listen to these videos, you would not lose even a single mark. Right? On this note, let's get started with the first topic. Yeah. So enemy property in India is the first topic. Now this topic covers the auction of land in Uttar Pradesh. Now there's a land in Uttar Pradesh. This land is to be auctioned, to be sold. Now this land actually belongs to the former Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf. However, this land is classified as enemy property under this act. So this topic explains how this property, which property? The enemy property, is classified as enemy property, the legal framework around it and the amendments made. So here we need to understand the legal framework through which the properties are classified as enemy properties. So we'll understand the features of these act, important for both prelims as well as mains GS paper 2. Now the enemy property is defined under which act? Under the Defence of India Act 1962, and later it was defined under 1968 Enemy Property Act. So two acts, one is of 62, the other one is 68, right? Now according to Defence of India Act 1962, that is India-China War, enemy property is defined as any property owned by persons, people or companies who have been declared as enemies by the Indian government. For example, let's say Pakistan is an enemy country, China is an enemy country. So the people belonging or holding the citizenship of these countries, if their property is there in India or registered in their names, then the government classifies their properties as enemy properties, defined as any property owned by the people or company belonging to our enemy country, which means a Pakistani whose property is in India, Pakistan is an enemy country. So the property of a person belonging to Pakistan, his property in India will be classified as enemy property. Pervez Musharraf, he is a Pakistani citizen, his property is in India, his property is classified as enemy property. An enemy, who is an enemy? An individual, firm or company who is a national of a country that is hostile to India, specifically during wartime or under conditions of external aggression. We are waging a war against, let's say, Pakistan or let's say China. So an enemy is that individual or a company who India has declared hostile, which means India has declared that this country is hostile, aggressive towards India. So people belonging to their countries will be declared as enemy or the companies. This act came into effect during the India-China War of 1962, right? and later during the India-Pakistan War of 1971. Why? Because during 62 war and 65 India-Pakistan, also 1971 war. During these wars, many people from our country, they migrated to Pakistan and China, right? Which means, let's say, this is China, this is India, person migrating from India to China, or let's say migrating to Pakistan. So his property that's existing in India, their property will be declared as enemy property. Simple. Now, first is Defense of India Act 1962. Now, Enemy Property Act 1968. Now, this act actually establishes the legal framework, right? Which means the enemy property, it belongs to whom? Who is the custodian of that enemy property is defined in the Enemy Property Act of 1968. Defense of India Act defines who is enemy, right? Or defines the property as enemy property. This Act, 68 Act, it establishes legal framework, that is who is the custodian of the enemy property is defined under this Act. Now, this Act formalized the vesting of such properties in the custodian of enemy property. And this custodian is nothing but the one who is going to handle that enemy property, right? So, the custodian of the enemy property will be appointed by not the state government, by the Indian government, central government. Very important point for your prelims. This act also defines enemy property as any property movable or immovable. Very important, movable as well as immovable, that belongs to, is held by or is managed by on behalf of an enemy or an enemy subject. For example, a person, India, Pakistan. A person has migrated to Pakistan. His son is an Indian citizen. But this 1968 Act says that if the enemy property is held by or is managed on behalf of an enemy. For example, a person A has migrated to Pakistan. His son B is in India. So his son B is actually managing the property on behalf of A, who is an enemy. So it defines enemy property. Even this land will be categorized or defined as enemy property. The term enemy is extended to include legal heir and successors of individuals who migrated to enemy countries like Pakistan or China, even if these heirs are now Indian citizens. Same. A person A migrated to Pakistan. His son, who is a legal heir to this person A, son, even this person will not be in a position to claim property of his father. Why? Because his father is declared as enemy as per the Indian government law, right? Which means once a person migrates to enemy country, his property belonging in India, his legal heir or let's say relatives, descendants cannot claim property. So this person B, who is the son of A, cannot claim his father's property in India. This is what the Act defines. Make it very clear. Now, what is this Mahmudabad case? See, this Mahmudabad case, right? For example, this person, Mahmudabad, Raja of Mahmudabad, he left for Pakistan in the year 1957. And when he left for Pakistan, he left behind the properties, right? So, and his properties were in Uttar Pradesh and many other regions. So, after Raja's death, his son, who stayed in India and became an Indian citizen, he claimed his father's property. He said that this land belongs to my father. I am an Indian citizen, so I have the claim over the land. The Supreme Court in the year 2005 ruled the judgment in favor of the son, Raja's son. However, the government felt that if this is how the case is going to be, the legal heirs, the descendants of India's enemies will claim their right on the properties of the people who left India for the foreign or enemy country. That's the reason the Indian government had set a precedent example by amending the 1968 Act in the year 2010, which was further solidified in the year 2017, which means this 2010 Act, it nullified the court's order. What did the court say? Yes, Raja's son has a claim to his father's property. Now the government said, or the government nullified the court's decision by amending an act, thereby mentioning that the legal heir of a person who is considered enemy to a country, his legal heir or his descendant, they cannot claim their right over the property. Which means once a person flees to our enemy country Pakistan, his property will belong to the Indian government. No matter if this person's son is an Indian citizen, doesn't matter. This person's property in our country will belong to the custodian who will be appointed by the Indian government. Now the 2017 amendment to the 1968 Act, right? It introduced to strengthen the legal framework of the original 1968 Act, right? Now the fact is that despite or when the Supreme Court ruled the decision in favor of the legal heir of Raja of Mahmudabad, many people whose father migrated to enemy country, they started claiming their right over the or on the property of their father. So there are many legal cases. In order to set free of these legal cases, the government enacted or made changes to the original 1968 Act, mentioning that it made it explicit, very clear, that legal heirs or successors, even if they are Indian citizens or citizens of non-enemy country, even if they take India's citizenship, or their successors could not inherit or reclaim enemy property. In short, person A migrates to Pakistan, his son B or any of his successors cannot claim their right on the property of this person who migrated to an enemy country. Which means now the legal heirs or successors cannot claim their right on the property. Simple. This is the Enemy Property Act 1968 and the 2017 amendment. Simple. Yes. The second topic that we'll be discussing is the integrated theatre commands. Now this first Joint Commander Conference. Now this is a platform where the commanders, top commanders of Army, Navy and Air Force come together to discuss on plans to be executed or plans to be made. So on critical issues, strategic issues, or how should the Indian Army or the Indian military function, operate when an enemy is attacking a country. So these commanders of Indian Army, Navy and Air Force come together, they discuss and work on a plan so as to counter attack if we are attacked by an enemy country, right? Now the first conference, during the first conference, the commanders of Army, Navy and Air Force actually were working on a detailed plan. Plan for what? For the creation of integrated theatre commands. So the commanders of Army, Navy and Air Force, they are working for the formation of integrated theatre commands. So you'll understand what is integrated theatre commands. Now, ITCs, Integrated Theatre Commands, are military formations that unify the assets and capabilities of Army, Navy and Air Force under single command structure. See, as of now, present, right? Each service, that is Army, Navy and Air Force, right? they operate independently. They operate independently, which means that their operation is different from one another. The ITCs, that is the integrated theater commands, right? They will unify the assets and capabilities of Army, Navy and Air Force. They enable joint planning and execution of military operations, which means simple that, let's say for example, Vishakhapatnam, right? China attacks Vishakhapatnam, right? Or let's say the eastern coast of our country. We have the Indian Navy stationed at Vishakhapatnam. But in order to, you know, counter attack more fiercely, more efficiently, more effectively, it would be better if the capabilities of Army, Navy and Air Force are combined. Which means whenever we are attacking our enemy China on the eastern coast, Army, Navy and Air Force, all these entities would come together to counter attack our enemy. This is a joint operation. Joint planning and execution of military operations, which means there will be planning between these three entities. Okay, if in case enemy attacks, how should we respond? That's the reason the commanders of Army, Navy and Air Force are working for the formation of integrated theater commands. And this idea emerged after the Kargil war. Why? Because after the Kargil war, we realized that there are significant gaps in our security apparatus which needs to be addressed. To address these issues, which issues? Coordination challenges between Army, Navy and Air Force, Kargil Review and Sheikh Katkar committees recommended the creation of unified command structure. What is unified command structure? So there is a unified command structure under which the Army, Navy and Air Force would operate and they would coordinate with one another, right? So doesn't mean that there is no coordination, but in order to make the coordination much or far more effective, they will unify the assets and capabilities of Army, Navy and Air Force. Now this concept, ITC, gained traction with the establishment of Chief of Defence Staff. The purpose of CDS, which was created, this post was created in the year 2019. The first person who was appointed as a CDS was Bipin Rawat, who unfortunately died in an helicopter accident, crash, Bipin Rawat. The purpose was greater integration of the Army, Navy, Air Force, right? Now this integration of Army, Navy and Air Force is crucial for rationalizing resources use, streamlining command structure and eliminating redundancies, right? Now China and USA, major powers of the world, they actually have been successful in implementing and using or creating integrated theater commands, right? So here what we do is we actually try to leverage the expertise of Army, Navy and Air Force. For example, Army might be good at something, Navy might be good at something, Air Force may be good at something. So we actually rationalize the resources. We streamline the command structures and use it for optimum benefit. See, now India has only one integrated theater command, and that is at the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Andaman and Nicobar Islands is the only island having integrated theater command. See, only joint command created in the year 2003. It was created in the year 2003. And these are the proposed ITCs. For example, Integrate Eastern Command. Now, this Eastern Command would include states like Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, and it will subsume the current Eastern Army Command and Eastern Air Command. So this ITC will subsume these commands. So we have Northern Command, then Southern Command, then we have Western Command, then we have Air Defense Command, then we have Logistics Command. So, are you getting my point? So, this is how the future would look like. But we are a long way to go before creating effective integrated theatre commands. Now, Chief of Defence Staff, as we discussed, it was created in the year 2019. The purpose is to integrate, to drive integration and jointness with the Indian Armed Forces, that is Army, Navy and Air Force. One of CDS primary responsibilities is to facilitate the creation of ITCs. Right? This is about the CDS. I hope you have understood the second topic. The relevance. What is the relevance? Given that the security today has become very complicated, it's not as easy as it was in the 20th century, and that's the reason, to be relevant in the present times, it is a need of hour to create integrated theatre commands, especially given the challenges that we are facing from China and Pakistan, right? And given the military capabilities China has, it is very important for India to create integrated theatre commands so that we can counter attack China much more aggressively and effectively, right? Now, let's focus on the third topic. The third topic talks about the judicial reforms, right? Now, recently, the president of our country, right, she used a term, and what is that term? Black coat syndrome. Okay, before this, let me just explain you what is judicial reforms, right? Reforms in the judiciary is a simple meaning. Reforms in the judiciary, which means that when a person commits a crime, a person has committed a crime, you know, it takes years, like 10 years, 20 years, it takes years to give the final judgment. Until that judgment is given, if the person is poor, he has to rot behind the jail, and if a person is influential, he will be released on, let's say, parole, or let's say he will be released on bail, because he has lawyers who represent him in the court and make him free. So, the purpose of judicial reforms is to make sure that when a person has committed a crime, right, he should be brought to book, which means he should be punished as soon as possible, so that the crime that he has committed, when that crime he has committed is fresh in the minds of people, and if this person is given punishment, then it would act as deterrence, which means the other people might fear, okay, if we commit a crime, this is what, or this is the punishment, right, we might have to face. And that's the reason we have to make reforms in the judiciary so that the victim gets justice. And this person, the victim, would get justice only by punishing this person and making sure that the judiciary is operating effectively, so that justice is dispensed when the crime or when the incident is fresh in the minds of people, right? Now, here the president actually, she highlighted about this term called black coat syndrome. Black coat syndrome. Now, what does this term indicate or refer to? It refers to people from rural areas who are poor. They avoid legal recourse. Why? Due to financial and mental burdens of prolonged litigation. For example, a poor person, or let's say a poor person in the rural area. Let's say, for example, he feels that something has not been done, or he has been met with injustice, right? Or let's say, for example, a rich farmer in a village has actually threatened and, let's say, did some illegal thing. Now, this poor person from a rural area would not approach the court. Why? Because the litigation, the legal process takes years, and that's the reason he feels that it is better to avoid the legal recourse. Why? Because it takes years together the court will hear, there will be defense lawyer, prosecution, and it will go on for years and years. That's the reason the poor person from a rural area is simply refrains from taking the legal help. See, the poor people, they work, or the money that they make is sufficient only for that day. That is foot to mouth. Foot to mouth. So the money that they earn is sufficient only for that particular day. So the next day they have to work in order to fulfill their family's demands. So in order to make sure that they are filling the stomachs of their family, they have to work. They do not have the privilege of or luxury of approaching the courts. So this black coat syndrome is where people, especially from the rural areas, they refuse from taking legal help. Why? Because simply they do not have that time, money to follow the legal follows, and they avoid legal help. They said, okay, let's see what the fate has to see. So they have to rely on fate rather than the legal recourse. This is what we understand by black coat syndrome. So a question in the prelims can be asked about black coat syndrome. For example, black coat syndrome recently seen in the news refers to which of the following? Four options. You have to select the right option. This is the answer. Right? Now, why do we need judicial reforms? Judicial reforms are necessary to address the systemic inefficiencies that currently plague the Indian judiciary. Which are the problems that the Indian judiciary is facing? For example, the backlog of cases. There are crores of cases pending in the Indian judiciary. Close to 5 crore cases are pending in the Indian judiciary, right? So, in order to ensure that the judiciary is better equipped to handle the growing complexities of modern society, right? The society is transforming or changing at a fast pace. So we have to equip or give judiciary the necessary power and infrastructure and training so that the judges are well equipped to dispose the cases, to get rid of the cases as soon as possible. Right? Why? Because the society is changing at a fast pace. There are many dimensions or legal angles that are yet to be explored, or the cases are getting more and more complicated, right? And that's the reason the judiciary needs to be equipped for judicial reforms. Reforms help in maintaining public trust in the judiciary. For example, if the judiciary is not dispensing justice, for example, let's say uh, someone has someone has uh, someone has done something wrong to me, right? I approach the court. I feel that I am the victim. I should get justice, which means the person who has actually threatened me or let's say abused me, I feel that person should be punished. I go to the court. I say I am innocent. I am a victim. The person who has threatened me, threatened my family, he should be punished. That person is influential, powerful, a politician. By bribing the judges, by by manipulating the records, he might save himself. I would feel that the judiciary is of no use. The judiciary, I lose trust in the judiciary. So in order for the people to trust in the judiciary, it is very important that judicial reforms need to be undertaken. The continuous evolution of legal and societal norms requires the judiciary to adapt, making reforms a dynamic and ongoing process, especially for the preservation of justice and equality. So the continuous evolution of legal and societal norms. For example, there are many same-sex couples, the LGBTQ community. So this is how the societal norms are evolving. For example, recently the Supreme Court has decriminalized same-sex couple, which means if two individuals, let's say two men or two women, right, if they want to live together, if they want to sort of live under the same roof, the police cannot arrest these people. Why? Because the Supreme Court has decriminalized same sex. However, legal rights are yet to be given to the same sex couples. So this is how the societal norms is evolving. and that's the reason the judiciary should be well equipped so as to get rid or should be in a position to address such legal complexities or the changing society or the changing nature of society. So, which are the current problems? Shortage of judges. Approximately 35% of the judicial posts remain unfilled, right? So, leading to low judge to population, which is currently only 21 judges per million people. Opaque appointment system. See, the appointment system. India is the only country where the judges appoint themselves. So, you see, we have the collegium system. The collegium system. In the collegium system, the judges appoint the judges. The Supreme Court judges appoint the High Court judges. It's a collegium of 1 plus 4, CGI plus 4 senior most judges. Backlog cases. Close to 5 crore cases are pending. Infrastructure deficiencies. If you go to the lower court, the district court, if you see the infrastructure or look at the infrastructure is poor. And that's the reason you don't feel like approaching the court, or even the judges at times refrain. Why? Because of the poor infrastructure, right? So focus has to be given on the infrastructure as well, right? So these are some of the problems in the Indian judicial system. And then we have gender disparity, right? There are hardly any women in the judicial process in the Indian judiciary. Under trials. Now, who are under trials? Under trials are those people who are accused of a crime. Their crime is yet to be proven. For example, let's say this person A has committed a crime, right? This person is accused of, let's say, theft. So he will be taken to the court. Now he is a poor person. There is no one to defend him. There is no one to defend him. So the judge will send this person behind the prison, that is in jail. Why? Because his crime is yet to be proven. Until the judge or judiciary understands if this person is a convict or if this person has really committed a crime or no, it will take time because there are lakhs and lakhs of cases pending. Until his time comes, many months and years will pass by. So this person who is poor person and has no one to represent, he has to spend much of his time behind the jail. He is known as, or such person or such people are considered to be under trials. So 90% of the people who are behind the Indian prison, behind the Indian jails are under trials, which means their crime is yet to be proven. We do not know if they have actually committed the crime or no. These are under trials. I hope you understood the third topic, right? Now let's focus on the fourth topic. The Ministry of Education, right, has clarified the definition of literacy and full literacy, right? This classification is a part of the renewed efforts to promote adult education. The purpose is to promote adult education, and how? Through this New India Literacy Program. New India Literacy Program is a 5-year initiative, right? It's a 5-year initiative running from 22 to 27. Let us try to understand one by one. First, definition of literacy. According to Education Ministry, right, literacy is defined as the ability to read, write and perform arithmetic, that is basic math, with comprehension that is to understand, let's say, a paragraph of English, let's say. Now literacy by now included only these dimensions, but now literacy also includes the ability to understand, interpret, and create, along with acquiring critical life skills like digital and financial literacy, which means you need to know how to transfer money from one person to other. You need to know how to operate your bank account. You should know how to receive or accept money online. So these life skills, it is also included under the word or definition literacy. This is what we understand by the term literacy. Full literacy is defined as achieving a 95% literacy rate, which means if a state achieves 95% literacy rate, that state will be classified as a full literacy. That state will be classified as full literacy. Are you getting my point? Full literacy, which means if a state, let's say state or union territory, achieves 95% literacy rate. Now, this 95% rate is considered equivalent to 100%. Achieving full literacy is very crucial. Achieving full literacy is very important. Why? Because the individuals face various disadvantages, such as they do not know how to transfer money from one person to other person, how to fill a job application, right? Or for that matter, how to use the technology, how to understand their rights. That's the reason achieving full literacy is very important. Here, try to understand the meaning of literacy and what do you mean by full literacy. Full literacy means achieving 95% literacy rate. A renewed push for adult literacy. Now, there's a renewed push for achieving adult literacy under this program by 2030. These all keywords are very important for your prelims examination. It is a centrally sponsored scheme. Centrally sponsored scheme, which means center and states both contribute. Which means center contributes, let's say 50 or 60% of the total budget for that particular scheme, and the rest is provided by the states. There's another term called central sector scheme. Central sector scheme. Now, the central sector schemes are funded totally by the union government. Please try to understand difference. Central sector schemes, which means the central government provides total funding. Central sponsored scheme, centrally sponsored scheme, which means the center contributes something, the states contribute something. The goal of NILP, New India Literacy Program, is to onboard 1 crore, that is 10 million learners annually, targeting individuals above the age of 15. Very important point for your prelims. Includes all states and union territories. Very important point under New India Literacy Program. The scheme has 5 components. Which are these 5 components? 1. Foundational literacy, critical life skills like digital transactions, vocational skills, basic education, and continuing education. So please remember these 5 components. So for the prelims, each and every point, every word in this slide is important. So they might ask you a question by 2050, or let's say it's a central sector scheme. No, it's a centrally sponsored scheme. 5 years, 23 to 27. It's for 5 years, right? All these numbers are very important for your prelims examination. The program is aimed at improving literacy among adults who did not have access to formal education, right? Because of certain situation, because of poverty at home, they're forced to drop out of the school. They did not receive foundational education. Now the government of India wants to literate the adults of our country, right? And this aligns with the broader national and international goals such as the UN SDG, which calls for achieving inclusive and equitable education for all. Now this stat, you can mention this stat in the, let's say, means examination. According to census 2011, India faces significant literacy challenge, right? 26 crore people aged 18 above are classified as non-literate. And out of this 26 crores, majority, that is close to 17 crore, are women. So this is a significant literacy challenge that our country is experiencing or going through. Now for the budget, fiscal year 24-25, the Ministry of Education has allocated 160 crore to the NILP, that is Promotion of Adult Literacy. In the previous years, only a portion of the fund was utilized, which means whenever the ministry allocates fund, unfortunately, only a portion of that fund is used. The rest of the fund is not utilized, unfortunately. So this should not happen. Each and every fund that is allocated should be properly utilized, to ensure that the objective of the New India Literacy Program is implemented in letter and spirit. So we are done with 4 topics. This is the 5th topic that we'll be discussing now. Here in this article, we'll understand 2 schemes. One is PM SHRI scheme, the other one is Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Now the Education Ministry, right, has refused to give the funds to 3 states, Delhi, Punjab and West Bengal. These are the states where the governments are different from the government at the central government, right? Now the Education Ministry has not given the funds or dispersed the funds to these 3 states. Why? Because the central government, the Education Ministry, has said that these states, 3 states, have refused to participate in the PM SHRI scheme. So in order to receive funds under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, you need to participate in the PM SHRI scheme. These 3 states did not participate in the PM SHRI scheme, and as a reason, they did not get funds under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. So let's try to understand what is SSA and PM SHRI scheme, right? PM SHRI scheme full form is Pradhan Mantri Schools for Rising India. Is a centrally sponsored scheme. Centrally sponsored means some fund or a portion of the fund is sponsored by the central government, rest by the states. So it can be 60s to 40, 70s to 30, 90s to 10, or let's say 50s to 50. Central government and this by the state government. The purpose of PM SHRI scheme is to upgrade at least 14,500 government schools into exemplar institutions to showcase the implementation of National Education Policy 2020, which means close to 15,000 government schools will be upgraded, and these schools will be made into an exemplar institutions, which means that, see, as of now, the education system that we follow is focused on rote learning. That is, mug up this chapter, mug up these questions, and you'll get good marks. This is not how it's going to help. The essence of new National Education Policy 2020. This National Education Policy focuses on holistic education, which means it strives to inculcate the spirit of critical learning. Critical learning, which means you should be in a position to analyze a particular thing. Let's say, for example, it can be anything. For example, religion. Like majority of the world, the people in the world are highly religious. So here, for example, Bhagat Singh. Let me give the example of Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh, he declared himself as an atheist, which means he understood the religions. He understood the impact of religions on people's lives. He started, or he understood whether religion is actually helping people or is actually dividing people. So here, if you see Bhagat Singh, he was in a position to critically analyze various issues of a country. Many people who have spoken against religion or the futility of religion, let's say. So only when you are in a position to analyze critically, you will be in a position to understand the root cause. For example, India is facing through many problems. So you should be in a position to critically analyze so that you understand the root cause of the issue, so that you address that issue. So rather than simply rotting or rather than simply mugging up things that are told to you, you should be in a position to analyze things critically. Because only when you question, you innovate something. If you stop questioning, all the scientists, all the great scientists have questioned, had this ability of critically analyzing things, and so they became scientists. So only when you have this ability to analyze critically, you think, when you think, you innovate something that is beneficial for the human mankind. So national education policy is focusing on developing critical reasoning, which will be beneficial for our country. So with a budget of 27,000 crore for the next 5 years, the central government will provide 60% and the rest of the funding will be provided by the state government, 60 to 40. This is what we understand by centrally sponsored scheme. The duration is from 22, 23 to 26, 27, after which means for these 5 years, the central government will provide 60% funds. After 5 years, the state governments have to bear the responsibility. This is the purpose of PM SHRI scheme. What is the purpose? To develop 14,500 government schools into exemplar institutions. These 14,500 schools would serve as role models to the nearby schools. The selected schools will serve as exemplar institutions showcasing all components of the NEP, right? PM SHRI schools will be developed as green schools, which means the schools, the exemplar institutions under PM SHRI scheme will incorporate environment friendly practices. For example, not using tissue paper is an environmentally friendly practice. Why? Because for the tissue papers, so many trees have to be felled. So this is environmentally friendly practice. Rather than cutting down trees, plant more trees. Try to use water only you require, rather than just allowing the water to flow, right? Make sure that you're using the water rationally, right? Or avoiding the usage of plastic, right? So these are some of the examples of environmentally or environment friendly practice, right? So this NEP will focus on experiential, holistic, integrated, play toy based, right? Inquiry driven, discovery oriented, learner centric, discussion based, flexible, enjoyable approaches. It will focus on the learning outcome, right? Which means the purpose is to provide holistic education. Rather than simply mugging up facts, you develop critical thinking, rational thinking. Based on that, you will be in a position to innovate something, right? So rather than focusing on mugging up, the focus will be on activities. So through activities, you learn many things. So this is the purpose of PM SHRI scheme. Then Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. We understood PM SHRI, now we'll understand Samagra Shiksha. Now this is an integrated education initiative, which means from pre until the 12th standard. So pre school to class 12. It's an integrated education launched in the year 2018. Again, the purpose is the same as is the purpose or objective of National Education Policy. Focuses on improving the quality of education. How? By enhancing learning outcomes through various components including foundational, vocational and life skills. For example, under Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, foundational education, basic education will be given. Vocational education, let's say plumbing work, carpentry, or let's say life skills like using technology. All this will be taught under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. The program focuses on community participation, teacher training, digital education, aligning with national and international goals for quality education. Right? So, now this is very important. The Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, very important point for your prelims. It's going to combine Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan and teacher education, which means all these three schemes will be combined into Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Very important point for your prelims. It aligns with SDG 4 and the National Education Policy, focusing on equitable and inclusive education. Right? So this is the purpose of Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Right? Now we discussed that three states are not receiving funds. Why? Because they have refused to participate in the PM SHRI scheme. For example, the West Bengal Chief Minister is not happy with the term PM SHRI scheme. She says that when the state governments are funding or sponsoring 40%, why is it that this prefix PM is used? This is her question, or that's the reason she is refusing from participating in the PM SHRI scheme. The Delhi Chief Minister, he said that we do not require PM SHRI scheme. Why? Because we have an alternative model in the name Schools of Eminence. What the government of India is trying to propose through national education policy, we are already implementing it. So why do we participate in the PM SHRI scheme? That's the reason these states are not receiving funds under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. So this is about the PM SHRI scheme and the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. And this was the explanation for the fifth topic. I hope you understood both PM SHRI scheme and the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. So students, if you understood all these 5 topics, trust me, you will not go wrong with any question asked from polity. Hopefully, you understood all the 5 topics that we discussed today. Make sure that you have noted down key points rather than writing down everything. You note key points, and once you are thorough with these 5 topics, you will get good score in the grand test to be held on the 5th October. Trust me. On this note, let's wind up this session. Thank you so much for watching all the 5 topics, and I wish you all the best for the grand test. This grand test will help you understand how the situation will be there, or the situation you might face when you actually appear for the UPS examination. So never ever skip the practice tests, such grand tests. These tests will help you to prepare for the marathon, the UPS examination. So make sure that you take this test very seriously, and make sure that you are well prepared to attend the questions. Right, students? So again, I wish you all the very best for the grand test. Thank you so much for watching.